Welcome, Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist of the San Antonio Express-News, Sanford Nowlin, editor-in-chief of the San Antonio Current, and thanks for joining us, and the conversation continues. Obviously, we have a runoff ahead in the race for mayor. Let's look ahead. Gilbert, let me start with you. Let's say we have a Nuremberg victory on June 8th. What changes do you foresee coming to City Hall if Ron Nuremberg gets a second term, especially if he wins fairly convincingly?
Well, I think we're going to see a continuation of what he's been trying to. I mean, even his supporters would say that he's had kind of an incomplete record in the first years, which is not uncommon. The first 2 years you were kind of laying the foundation for what you want to do. So I think he's going to start to push really hard on Connect SA transportation plan, which if it passes when it goes before voters next year, is going to have a huge impact on the city. We're going to get more details on the climate plan, which right now is kind of a set of goals more than anything else. So I think those are the things that I think are going to be keys. One of the things I'm really interested in too is the future of pre-K for SA. I think that that's something that voters need to think about when
that's coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's coming up in November 2020, and because it's in place now and people have gotten used to it. I think it's going to have an easier passage than it had in 2012 when you had to sell it to voters. But nonetheless, having a mayor who supports it, I think makes a difference, and I think that he's certainly someone who's going to, I think, be very supportive of continuing that for another 8 years.
Sanford, what can we see from Mayor Greg Brockhouse in the next 2 years?
I think this is going to be an interesting challenge if Greg Brockhouse wins. He certainly spent much of his term at odds with pretty much everybody else on the council except for Clayton Perry, and even then he was odd man out on some votes. I asked him about this at his watch party, and he said, "Look, I'm going to have to figure out how to make deals with people, and I'm going to have to figure out how to sort of bring people together and talk to them and have conversations," which is something he accused Ron Nuremberg of failing to do. But at the end of the day, the mayor can sort of set the agenda in San Antonio, but the mayor is just one vote, so. It will be interesting to see how well he can function when he's still on a council that's dominated by progressives.
Yeah, I mean, we have a city council that was overwhelmingly elected at a time when the mayor was not. Yeah. I mean, would he go into a second term weakened by that?
Ron Nuremberg?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the hard thing for him is I think when he got elected, there was a feeling that this was. I mean, I saw it this way. I think many people saw that coming a few months after Donald Trump's election, that this was sort of kind of a progressive backlash in the city of San Antonio. We saw John Courage getting elected in District 9, a Democrat who had run for office many times in a very conservative district, winning. So I think that the pieces were in place for Ron Nuremberg to be able to work with the council maybe more effectively than he has. I think some of it is just stylistic, that he isn't maybe the best at communicating with his fellow council members, even on things that they might agree on. So hope that might be something that he will learn from. I always go back to the examples we saw with Phil Harburger and Julian Castro, who I think by the time you saw them on the dais, they had everything locked down, and they knew they were going to have their 1 or 2 votes on the north side that were going to be in opposition, but everybody else was in place, and he had a certain council member. You carry the ball on this issue, and you carry the ball on that, and I'm not seeing as much of that.
Now, anything in particular you guys noticed in the city council races that you thought was noteworthy, Sanford?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. We were talking about this earlier. How handily Trevino won in District 1, and Justin Hawley obviously was able to fundraise, but at the end of the day, just being the chamber-backed candidate was not enough for him, and I think that's very much about District 1, where folks tend to be a little bit more reticent to adopt somebody who's viewed as an ally of developers.
Another interesting one for me, not necessarily the outcome, but the margin. You had Ana Sandoval in District 7. She was being challenged by Trevor Whitney, who's worked for Blue Duck. He no longer works for Blue Duck Scooters, but has had worked for them. And he was basically pushing a very Brockhausian sort of agenda. I mean, it was, the city government, they're raising your taxes, they're doing this, and it was a very sort of anti government or more of a small government sort of argument, and very anti-media and so on. And District 7, on the north end of that district, there's some real conservative precincts in that district, and his message did not play. I think he got about 18%, and she won with 68%. I think just the margin how resounding that was, I think, bodes well for her future. And when I look to potential future mayoral candidates, I mean, the two that stand out to me, who are not in the race this year, are Ray Saldana and Ana Sandoval.
Thank you very much. Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, San Antonio Express News. Sanford Nowlin, editor-in-chief of San Antonio Current. Thanks for joining us on The Conversation Continues.